Greetings fellow Mist Wanderers, my name is Steve Morgan and this is DM of the Mists, covering all things Curse of Strahd and Ravenloft. I've covered off other Curse of Strahd NPCs in the past, all of the NPCs who can be fated allies, as per the Taroka reading. They were covered off in 2 separate videos, plus I gave dedicated videos to Van Richten and to Esmeralda as well. But now I thought I'd move on to some of the more evil NPCs, the bad guys. I've got plans to do Babala Saga. I've actually had a request from someone to do Babala Saga, so I'll try and do that soon. I want to do the consorts, the brides, but today's video is all about Rahadin. Now, I pronounce it Rahadin. In the Heir of Strahd novel, it's pronounced Rahadin, and I saw someone once pronounce it Rahadin, so there's potential lots of different ways to say it, but I say Rahadin and will for the purposes of this video. And in this video, I'll briefly cover his lore, resources, where you can find information for him, how to roleplay him, how to run in combat, and more. It goes without saying that there will be spoilers for Curse of Strahd in this, but also Heir of Strahd, the recent Ravenloft novel that came out, although I kind of let that slip a minute or so ago. But if you haven't read Heir of Strahd yet and want to go into it surprised, then you might want to stop watching this video, read Heir of Strahd, come back to this. There's only minor spoilers, I think. Rahadin's an interesting one because I've seen various anecdotes from various DMs who think he's weak or have players not respect him. I'm sorry, but I think he's terrifying. There's the screams of thousands of people he's killed that you can hear just by standing next to him, essentially. And he's got a high challenge rating as well. He's a challenge rating 10. Strahd is 15, and there's a couple of people who are between the 10 and 15, but not many. So he's one of the stronger NPCs in the whole of Barovia, Curse of Strahd. And I'm going to make a semi-controversial point here. I don't think Strahd is the most evil person in Curse of Strahd. I think it's actually Rahadin. I think Strahd is second and Rahadin is first, because some of the stuff Rahadin has done is messed up. Under the guise of following orders as well. People might disagree with me and say, no, Strahd is the Dark Lord, he has to be the most evil, but I don't know. Rahadin, I think, maybe edges him on certain points. And if you do have players who disrespect him and mock him, I wouldn't worry too much. Even in Heir of Strahd, I don't want to say PCs, it's a novel, it's not a campaign. The characters in that mock and demean him behind his back and make comments about him, so even they do it. But I think the key to Rahadin is having your players think he's weak and think it's okay to disrespect him, and oh my gosh, if Rahadin attacks them, he does not hold back, as I'll talk about later. Let's talk about his lore first of all. So in a lot of these videos I often say, this presumes you already know the lore about him, you read the information in Curse of Strahd, for example. But in this case, I think I would like to talk about Rahadin's background and lore, but a very sort of abbreviated version to if you read it in the book yourself. So he's essentially Strahd's Chamberlain. He served Strahd's family for nearly 500 years, going back to Strahd's father, King Barov. He's a dusk elf, and you learn more about the dusk elves in the Vallaki chapter. They live in the Vistani camp just outside Vallaki. It says that he was exiled for refusing to bow down to a dusk elf prince who he considered weak and corrupt. And when the dusk elves later declined to pay fealty to King Barov, Rahadin helped Barov conquer them. Now this is interesting because my headcanon, or what I thought was the case, was that Rahadin betrayed his people, but it's more the case that he was cast out and this was his revenge. Perhaps this is what led to a slide into evil. He wasn't, being exiled for refusing to bow down to a corrupt prince. Maybe once upon a time, Rahadin was actually good. Can you even imagine a non-evil Rahadin? But maybe he just became bitter and angry about it, and when he sided with King Barov, this was his chance to get back at the Dusk Elves who cast him out. King Barov made him an honorary member of the family, so he considered Barov his father and Strahd his brother. And later became one of Strahd's generals after Barov's passing, and later again after that he became the castle Chamberlain. And it said that he instilled terror in the castle staff by routinely flogging those who didn't perform their duties to his exacting standards. Then Petrina came, a fellow Dusk Elf, and he was suspicious of Petrina's motives. But then after that, Tatiana came. I won't go too much into the detail of Tatiana and Strahd, you probably know that already. But Rahadin's loyalty didn't waver after Tatiana died and Strahd became a vampire. Because I'm sure I've read discussions online where people have said, surely at that point he'd be like, Strahd, should you be doing that? But nope, he just carried on serving Strahd as if Strahd hadn't even changed. says that he was eager to put Tatiana out of Strahd's mind, so Rahadin lured more women to the castle, and Strahd took several of them as his brides. So Rahadin was responsible for Valenta, I've forgotten their names, Anastasia and Ludmilla for going to the castle. Following Tatiana's death, Petrina tried again with Strahd, but was stoned to death by her own people to keep Strahd from claiming her as his wife. And then Strahd sent Rahadin to punish the Dusk Elves. Rahadin slew the Dusk Elves, the female Dusk Elves, so that the males couldn't breed, and also sliced off the ears of Petrina's brother Casimir, who had orchestrated the stoning. And it says, this is at the end of his appendix section now, a lot of what I've just said is borrowed from there. The only thing he cares about is Strahd von Zarovich, for whom he would gladly give his life. Resources for him, or Curse of Strahd is the obvious one. I quickly went through Curse of Strahd to try and figure out all the places where he appears, and I think it is just the castle in multiple places, so as a random encounter, the entry, K8, and his office, K72, the Amber Temple chapter in the Rahadin's prayer event, Rahadin's Revenge, which is if you defeat Strahd and Rahadin is still alive, Rahadin is the final boss, and obviously his appendix at the end of the book. Heir of Strahd. Spoiler for Heir of Strahd now. Rahadin, or Rahadin, appears in this. And he doesn't have a huge part. He's essentially the one who invited them to the castle pretty early in the book, and then is found at the castle a few times, but doesn't appear massively. The interactive Tome of Strahd, which I did a video all about recently, has Rahadin in that, because the author kind of merged the I Strahd lore and the Curse of Strahd lore, so you've got Rahadin in that, even though Rahadin didn't appear in pre-5th edition stuff like I Strahd. And I found this cool resource called Rahadin, Dread Knight of Ravenloft. This is by the same author who did the Real Housewives of Ravenloft, if you folks know that. And this is like an undead form of Rahadin that's challenge rating 15, so you could have it that if Rahadin's killed before you'd like him to be killed and you'd like him to kind of come back, I think the justification, the argument is the Dark Powers are going to let someone this evil just die and that's it. No, they're going to bring him back and be undead, and you've got another stat block you can throw at your players. In terms of art, there's obviously the official art, which I think is good. However, I've seen various discussions online about how there seems to be a mismatch between the art and how him and Dusk Elves are described. Dusk Elves are described as having dark skin. He doesn't look essentially dark skin in that art. I wonder if there's some sort of disconnect between maybe the art director of the book and the people writing the story, or perhaps they changed how the Dusk Elves looked after they'd already done the art. But there's loads of other art out there. There's Moonberry Maple, who does lots of cool art for Curse of Strahd recently. And I just want to say thank you to Moonberry, because she was not only cool with me showing her versions of Rahadin, but I said, do you have transparent versions of all three? Because originally she had it as one image and it's like 3 versions of Rahadin. And she said, well, no, plus I'd have to like color in extra bits, because, you know, one Rahadin is in the way of the other. But don't worry, I'll just do that for you. And I was like, please don't go to any trouble. And she did anyway. So huge, big thanks to Moonberry. That's awesome. The Rahadin art I showed earlier is from the Dread Knight resource I mentioned a minute ago from the Real Housewives of Ravenloft. Caleb is drawing, has done a lot of art and has done Rahadin art as well. And I'm sure you can find more from the Curse of Strahd subreddit and elsewhere. In terms of role-playing him, he's quite a simple character to run. I say he's kind of got 2 forms. He's got butler mode and I'm going to murder you mode. With the former, he is just the always professional servant butler. But I flavour it, there's always something a little bit creepy and settling about him. And Curse of Strahd, straight out of the book, anytime he kind of appears, has good flavour for him. The random encounter where it says, and I quote, "The master wishes to see you," in tones of grim voice in the darkness. So like Rahadin just appears. And it kind of suggests that he lurks, and maybe the players might think, oh gosh, is Rahadin somewhere? Is he around? I love the bit in the entry where it describes him as being, and I quote, "as quiet as a cat." And you can almost, you can almost hear, or you can almost not hear him, picture him coming down the stairs and not even hearing a single footstep. Hence his stealthiness, which I'll talk about in a bit. It's good at sort of getting flavour for his cruelty, what he did with the Dusk Elves. An interesting point I picked up on upon rereading everything about Rahadin ahead of this video is the book says Strahd sent Rahadin to punish the Dusk Elves, but it doesn't say Strahd sends Rahadin to kill all the female Dusk Elves. So was that Rahadin's idea? Was Strahd basically like, punish them? And Rahadin's like, yes, my lord, and decides to do so in one of the most barbaric, cruel ways possible. And I think that adds to like his evilness essentially. But you've got kind of a bit of wiggle room there. Was Strahd the one who gave... Well, Strahd's the one who gave the order, but was Strahd the one who said, do this horrible thing to ourselves? Or did Rahadin take the initiative and decide that himself? And the fact that he's following orders as well, I think is kind of messed up somehow, when Strahd could tell him to do anything and Rahadin will do it, no matter how evil or cruel it might be. And there's a bit of flavour as well about the screams, the deathly choir that surrounds him. He, and I quote, can't hear them, nor would he be haunted by them if he could. That is cold. And in my game, one of my players, I had that they could hear the voices even, you know, outside of combat, but obviously it didn't hurt them. So they kind of approached Rahadin, or Rahadin approached them, and they could hear these screams of men and women. And one of them said, can you hear that? And Rahadin's like, hear what? And they're like, oh, we don't like this guy, he's freaky. And I would play it that he seems harmless. He doesn't want to let Strahd down and be seen as a bad Chamberlain, a bad servant, by losing his cool if the PCs are rude to him. He will just take it on the chin. He'll probably think, oh, remember this when I'm killing you later on. But I would roleplay him as he seems harmless. Make him underestimated. And then if he's attacked, or he's given the order to attack, or it's at the point where he thinks, right, now I've got to attack the players, have him just be terrifying, amplified by the men and women screaming thing. Oh, speaking of the men and women screaming thing, I did a live AMA recently. I'm hoping to do more of these in the future, and somebody said that they didn't take Rahadin seriously, and they were thinking of when they see Rahadin playing the sounds of screaming. There was an old Final Fantasy game where I think one of the final bosses, there's the sound of screaming in the background. It's quite unsettling. But and I should have said this at the time, it's something I thought of afterwards, I think stuff like that can either make it seem more immersive, but there's the risk that it might take the players out of it, and they might think it's a bit silly, or they might find it funny. I think the best thing to do is just describe the screaming. You know, you hear men and women screaming, maybe one of the screams is a woman saying, help, please, no, don't kill me, ah, something like that. And like not having sound effects and just describing it. Sometimes our imaginations are worse than actually seeing or hearing something, because you might imagine it worse than if you heard an audio track of people screaming, for example. So that would probably be the way I'd go about it. So I went off on a tangent there. Going back to role-playing Rahadin, I would have it as well that he would never, ever, 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 under any circumstances, betray Strahd. He is 100% loyal to Strahd. Not even a natural 20 persuasion check could convince him to betray Strahd. It would be an impossibility to have him even consider betraying Strahd. He'd be the last person in the whole Barovia to do it. I say this because I'm sure I have seen discussions in the past on, say, the Curse of Strahd subreddit where one or two DMs said, oh, they managed to convince Rahadin to swap sides. I'm sorry, I don't think he ever would be the one to do that. Maybe other people. I would argue as well the consorts couldn't, because they're vampire spawn and Strahd can flick a switch, so to speak, and have them, you know, snap in line, but definitely not Rahadin. And a great thing can happen as well is there could be a potential run-in between Rahadin and Casimir at the Amber Temple. Because I imagine a lot of players who go to the Amber Temple go because Casimir tells them about it and says, will you help me? I want to go with you. Plus they got an extra NPC ally then to help them out. And Rahadin could be doing his frog swallowing thing. I forget what it is. And so you could have a sort of awkward, tense standoff between Casimir and Rahadin. And, you know, maybe Casimir is uncomfortable or, you know, says something to Rahadin, and Rahadin just kind of shrugs it off, and that's like all the horrible stuff he did was no big deal. So maybe role-play him in that kind of regard as well, that like maybe Casimir loses his cool and Rahadin's just like, I don't care, you're beneath me. Let's talk about combat next. He's a stealthy dude, a plus 14 bonus to stealth, that is wildly high. He can cast non-detection on himself to make it even harder for him to be tracked, thinking in terms of if someone tries to cast a divination spell to locate where he is. You could have it that he hides, especially before combat. Hides using Mask of the Wild, which says he can hide even if only lightly obscured by foliage, heavy rain, falling snow, mist, and other natural phenomenon. The reason I emphasize mist is it's Barovia. There's likely to be mist everywhere. You would have him hide in that, and then he strikes again. And then he can attack either with 3 scimitar attacks or 2 darts. The darts look like he could do more damage because of the extra poison damage, but he can do the scimitar 3 times. I guess this is the case of if he's a distance away, chuck some darts. If he's close, it's scimitar time. He's got a passive perception of 21, also wildly high, so it's unlikely anyone will be able to sneak up on him. If he gets the chance before combat, maybe he casts Magic Weapon on his scimitar, Now it does an 11 plus 11 to hit and does an extra bit of damage as well. And during combat, I would have him dedicate his bonus action entirely to Deathly Choir, 3d10 psychic damage. That can really hit the players hard, especially if they're a lower level. You can also cast Misty Step 3 times a day if you say he needs to escape a grapple, move to a more advantageous position, but that requires a bonus action, so he couldn't do that and the Deathly Choir thing at the same time on the same turn. He has an intelligence of 15 and a wisdom of 16, so he knows who to take care of first, maybe the most problematic PC or the one with low AC. If there's a wizard who has very strong destructive spells, maybe Rahadin zones in on that PC to take them out of the fight first, plus then you've got your other PCs worrying about having to heal the downed wizard as he then moves his attention to the others. With an attack bonus of 10 or 11 with magic weapon, even a high AC PC is going to endure some hits, plus Deathly Choir is a saving throw anyway. If he's encountered in his office since the end game, he's accompanied by the Shadow Demon that joins the fight. And there's a lot of information as well. There's some various places in the book. He fights to the death. He is not the kind of person who retreats. He keeps fighting until either the PCs are dead or he's dead. And hopefully the latter for your players' sakes. How it played out in my campaign, Rahadin didn't appear a huge amount, and it was just all the sort of obvious places you'd expect him to. So they first met him at the dinner. Now I did the dinner, as a lot of DMs do, as a sort of more diplomatic meeting, not as a trap as it suggests in the book. Although in my case, they did get both, because when they went to Castle Ravenloft for the endgame, the trap was sprung like it is in the book the second time. I had him that he kept tabs on troublesome PCs while they were there for the dinner, and Strahd gave them a tour. There was one PC who wanted to sneak off, even though he's not a rogue, he was a bard, I think. I had Strahd say something like, Rahadin, keep an eye on that one. And Rahadin's like, yes, my lord. And then every now and again, if that PC was thinking of sneaking off, he just heard the men and women screams as Rahadin slowly approaches him, and he's like, oh, get away from you, creepy dude. And then he was seen again in the endgame, when they were roaming the castle and they went below ground and found his office. And I played it that he's just, the book describes that at that point, if they see him, he fights to the death. I had it that he said something like, he's just casually working at his desk and barely paying them any attention. And he goes, so, you have chosen death then, I see. And then just really quickly leaps over the table, draws his scimitar, starts screaming a war cry and starts slash, slash, slash. And my players were a bit like, whoa. And even though it was a very one-sided battle, because it was just Rahadin and the Shadow Demon versus quite a few PCs, and a couple of NPC allies, including the Fated ally, he was still glad that he was able to, weaken them. I think his final words as he was dying was something like, I'm proud to have Strahd and weakened you for him. And then, he's dead. So unfortunately, I didn't get the opportunity to play Rahadin's Revenge, which is a shame. Although we were working to a tight time frame, wrapping up the campaign, so I don't think we'd have had time for that anyway. But when I was a player of Curse of Strahd before DMing it, my DM sprung that on us, and it was very much a case of we were all nearly dead from Strahd, and then Rahadin appears, and we're like, no, he's going to be the one who kills us off, isn't he? But we just about managed to defeat him as well, with probably like one player who was not on death saves or something ridiculous. And that's it for this one. Hopefully you found this video useful for when you run Rahadin in your game. I love hearing stories and anecdotes from other DMs, so tell me your stories of Rahadin. How did you roleplay him? What happened in your campaign? Did your players mock him? Did they live to regret it? Things like that, just hit me in the comments. Upcoming videos, I'll do some more NPC videos such as Babylon Saga, not just roleplay, but how to run her in combat. Do a video about the consorts as well. I'm conscious quite a few people have done videos and resources on the consorts, so I don't want to double up. So I'll do that if I've got enough information to justify doing a video. I also do Ravenloft videos. So did one about Hazlan recently. Going to do a part 2 of that soon. Hazlan is a domain of dread where it's almost like wild magic surges, if you know your wild magic sorcerers, are kind of happening on overdrive, and it's run by an evil red wizard of Thay. And going to do Blaustein, which is one of the islands in the Sea of Sorrows. Going to do the Shadowlands, which is sort of like if Arthurian legend had a gothic spin, things like that. So if you're thinking of running different domains of dread outside of Barovia, whether it was one-shots or do what I did, it's do the post Curse of Strahd Ravenloft campaign. Honestly, I recommend it. It's been amazing. Then you might want to check those out. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you found this video useful, please like it, and I'll see you at the next one. Thank you, Mr. Wanderers.